oceanside today. As you can see, it's super beautiful. The tide is down. So fresh and just so soothing. It's just beautiful. This week has been particularly difficult, and I wanted to share because I know a lot of people have, in this community have dealt with, death and this type of thing, and sometimes the grieving side of things isn't always easy. It's not just one straight line as to like you're over it or anything like that. So what happened in my life was that my brother died when I was quite young. It was a farming accident, and anyways, we didn't, as a Jehovah's Witness, like, and back then too, like we're talking over 40 years now since that happened, and but when that happened, like it wasn't something that was really dealt with, because as a Jehovah's Witness, when someone dies, you pray and you discuss how we're going to see that person again in the new system, right? So that whole thing about like he's going to be resurrected and all of this. So when you leave the organization, it becomes kind of a weird thing sometimes, because 35 years of my life, I had always believed, yeah, of course I'm going to see my brother again, and in the new system of things, he's going to be perfect. He's going to be looking for me, because that's what I've always been told. Of course he's going to be looking for me. I was his playmate. We were very young and close, I should say close in age and young. But anyways, that was the first memory of my life was his death. It was the day he died. So anyways, that anniversary of his death was Wednesday this week, and I didn't even realize that it had come up until I started thinking about, like, it must be pretty close, the day that he died, we must be getting close to that day. And then it happened to be that exact day when I started looking into, like, when was the actual day? Because that's another thing. It was kind of strange that I couldn't actually remember the exact day, because that was never really discussed at all from our family or just anybody. Nobody ever talked about it. And with my family, like, we didn't grieve. I say we didn't grieve properly at all. We never even talked about his dying. We never talked about any of it. And no shade on my parents, because my mom was pregnant at the time. And so, they had a whole lot of things happening in their life, let alone, 2 young children, me and my other sister, and then losing their young son. So their only son. And yeah, so anyways, so I couldn't even actually talk about this. I could never even talk about my brother until the age probably of like 27, when I finally could actually say something about him without crying. And I mean, this is what is important about processing and grieving and talking about it. And talking about it is part of the process. But yeah, I'm still struggling for words sometimes around it, because it's something that was just never really discussed. The only time we talked about my brother was during prayer. So always, like, prayers where we would talk about seeing him in the new system of things, and how, we're all going to be there to welcome him back, and he's just sleeping right now, and like that kind of narrative. So having that type of narrative for your entire life, and then waking up from the religion where you're just like, okay, I don't believe that anymore. That's a very strange thing to kind of come to terms with. And I'm sure a lot of you out there have had similar type of experiences and needing to come to terms with, you know, like understanding like the circle of life and death and moving forward and grieving and all these things. All these, they're some of the most difficult conversations to have. So, you know, I apologize for struggling with talking even about it, but I think it's something that's important to discuss, you know, because it's there and it hurts, and it's one of these pains that doesn't go away. It gets minimized somewhat, but it never is gone forever. Like, it just isn't. So yeah, like I said, it was a lot around my family of, and the religion is with Jehovah's Witnesses is all about, like, you know, welcoming back. He's just sleeping right now. All that kind of narrative, right? I do have a lot of empathy for people, like such as my parents, who have gone through that type of loss of a child at any age, and so yeah, I carry a lot of empathy for that. But my life around death, as I said, that was the first memory in my life, was my brother dying, the day he died. And even though we never talked about it, nobody talked about it. Like, nobody talked about it except in prayer, and we'd see pictures sometimes, but it was just not discussed. And it's kind of a bizarre thing. Anyways, but I've always had a kind of a curiosity around death, in such, and not fearful. I mean, I don't feel fearful of death, and maybe because I was exposed to it at such a young age. But like my family, I think a lot of this has kind of stopped happening, but in terms of having open caskets, right? Like, my brother's funeral was an open casket, and so I do recall his funeral as well. So that was, I think it was 6 days later that they had a funeral at the Kingdom Hall. And I recall little bits and pieces of that day. I do remember people walking by my brother in the open casket, and it was really, a lot of that has stuck with me, of just how it seemed like more of a ceremony, and people were, it just didn't feel like it, how can I say that? It felt like it needed more prominence than some people gave it. I hope that makes sense. Anyways, so Jehovah's Witnesses and funerals, and I don't recall this from my brother's funeral, but I've been to plenty of funerals since, of course, in my life. Because as a Jehovah's Witness, you pretty much go to every funeral that happens in your congregation, of course. But then, of course, like, I've had, you know, family, my other family die. So, like, grandparents, great-grandparents, aunts, uncles, whatever, like, all these people. Some are close, some not as close. I've had friends close to me that have died, and, you know, supporting their families through that. So I've had a lot of, like, experience around death, I guess. Anyways, so with the funerals, so one of the things that kind of sticks out for me with Jehovah's Witnesses and funerals, like, because I've been, like, when I was Jehovah's Witness, I'd go to funerals that, like, worldly funerals, right? Where it was like a celebration of life. And I was just in awe of these type of funerals, because I'm like, excuse me, I was like, this is so cool. Like, they're talking about him or her, and they have videos and just this beautiful celebration of their life. And and that's something that we miss out a lot as Jehovah's Witnesses, like, as we were, because we don't really celebrate that person near as much as we celebrate them coming back in the resurrection and this whole fairy tale of what, you know, is going to happen with them. And sometimes you need that fairy tale just to get through. And I you know, a lot of people do need that, whether, oh, they're now an angel, like all kinds of religions believe in that sort of thing, where you die and now, oh, you know, little Johnny's looking down on us, or you know, like these whether it's children or whoever, your family is now an angel, and so now they see them in nature, or, and who's to say it's true or not true? You can't prove it, so I don't believe in those things until there's more evidence to actually, you know, believe in those type of things. But at the same time, I don't throw shade on anybody who believes in that, because it's a really comforting thing in a time of such trauma, more trauma than others, I guess. For my brother, it was very traumatic, as to, you know, the accident he died from and such, for my family. But so I can only totally understand why my parents would want to, you know, grab a hold of that hope of everlasting life and hope to see him again. So I understand it. And same with people who believe in angels, or, you know, people who've died and now they're in heaven, this sort of thing. I understand it, because there's that comfort that it's sometimes very hard to deal with looking at it straight in the face as to what it is, you know. So, but at Jehovah's Witnesses funerals, like I always kind of wish, like, oh, I would love to know more about the person and more about their life, like spend more time. Okay, birds, enough. Maybe I was talking about angels. Seeing them, anyway, seeing them in nature, and there they are. No, anyways, I don't really believe in that. No, so like with Jehovah's Witnesses funerals, and how they tend to just focus more on resurrection and more on Jehovah's kingdom, and how, you know, the earth is going to be different, we're all going to be perfect, and this beautiful, amazing, wow, like this beautiful hope that it gives people who have just lost someone in their life. I mean, who, you know, when you're going through something that difficult, as in losing someone you love and treasure in your life, like, what could be more wonderful than to be told that you're going to see them again? So yeah, that's where I kind of, when I look at Jehovah's Witnesses funerals, sometimes I'm disappointed in that they use it as a way of kind of promoting their propaganda and carrying on their whole marketing, you know, like, because when somebody dies in the congregation, you're encouraged to mingle and support the non-believers that come in, and giving them literature, or, you know, who knows, could you imagine, we might get a Bible study out of this. Like, that's kind of the feeling around Jehovah's Witnesses funerals, and it kind of makes me sad, because it's not about the person, but it's more about, you know, maybe we can make a conversion out of this sad thing that's happening in someone's life. I also want to talk about, like, when people have been disfellowshipped. So I have one experience that stands out so sadly to me. So in the congregation that I used to be in, and this guy that I grew up with, and we went to school together and everything, he ended up getting disfellowshipped, all right? His mom, who, she was faithful as they come, you know, she was a Jehovah's Witness in our congregation, and she died. And when he came to the funeral, it was the saddest freaking thing, because he was disfellowshipped and nobody talked to him. He was like sitting almost in the middle of the room, like after the service. He was sitting in the middle of the room, you know, where they have like tea and cookies and whatever after, and nobody went up to him. And quite frankly, like I walked by him and I said hi to him, and you know, and just kind of, you know, sorry. But I didn't want to say more because, you know, the elders are watching, and it's just so freaking sad, and just so, it's so frustrating to me that in that time nobody actually reached out to him, and I find that just awful. And anyways, that sits with me because I'm like, my God, of all times to show concern and empathy, and how would you ever pull that person back into the religion by treating him so poorly? I mean, when I had left, so here's another experience of my own, is where when I was, well, it was in 2015, and my grandpa had died. And I was very close to my grandparents. I've talked to them about them a lot in my videos. But when he passed away, I hadn't gone to that congregation for quite a few years, probably 4 years. I mean, I moved away and everything, so it was pretty weird for me to come in there, see my ex-husband, see all my ex-family, my ex-husband's family, and then see my family, of course, because it was all about my family, really. But this was the congregation that was my congregation, right? So me going back to it was very weird. But the weird thing was that here are all these people that I've spent so much time with, and they were my friends. There was very few that actually came up to me to give condolences or just like to say hi. You know, I found it very strange. It was like everyone's was like hands off, or like stay away, or, you know, it was just a strange feeling. So, and I'm not disfellowship. And at that point, I mean, if they had shown more love, maybe I would have like considered going back to a meeting or so. But I mean, because at that point I might have been swayed back. I don't know. But anyways, that's where I feel a lot of empathy for people that, one, have lost someone, and two, are being treated so poorly when they actually have lost someone and going through this funeral process at a Jehovah's Witness funeral. Because when it comes right down to it, it isn't really, it feels less about the person and more about the religion and the hope and conversions and such like that, stuff like that. But anyways, I'd love to hear your guys' experiences and thoughts and things around that, because like I said at the beginning, it's important to process these things, and the only way we process them is talking them out. So here I am, and sorry if I rambled a little bit. It's not an easy topic for me, and I certainly have never shared this like publicly, I guess. So yeah. Anyways, I hope you're all well, and yeah, and if you like my videos, I'm supposed to say this, please subscribe and like them, and because that helps me to keep them going. And yeah, I'll talk about my next video coming up. I'm doing another Let's Chat next weekend, and that'll be awesome. So stay tuned and make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you get notified when they drop. Okay, sorry for being kind of depressed here, but I'm doing okay. And all right, anyway, blah blah, I'm not gonna chat anymore, and I'm shutting this down. Bye.